And Tuesday is here. Hello there. Good afternoon and welcome to The Pulse. We're coming to you live from our studios here in Accra. We're on your digital terrestrial TV because we're free to air. You can catch us live on DSTV channel 421 and Go TV channel 144. This is Joy News, independent, fearless and credible journalism. Coming up this afternoon on The Pulse, special prosecutor takes on High Court Justice Ifiasewa Esari Bochwe on the supposed grounds that she totally misapprehended his application for the confirmation of the freezing order on the will of former Chief Executive Officer of the Forestry Commission, Sir Kojo Owusu-Afriyie. This afternoon on the Pulse, there's more coming your way as we get more reactions to the latest from the court, plus hear from the experts on this matter. It's all here on the program for you. And this afternoon as well, government is engaging with the coalition of labor unions on the growing demands for a 20% cost of living allowance. We're live on the ground to bring you the latest fallout from that meeting, which is underway at the Ministry of Health. And Ministry of Education finally dispatches food supplies following days of shortages in various public schools across the country. We'll hear from some of the groups, including the Conference of Heads of our sister schools, which is calling for some reforms in the distribution of food items to public schools. My name is Blessed Sogah. The Pulse, as always, is brought to you by Global Communities Dignilu, affordable, safe sanitation. Remember that this afternoon as well, we're streaming live on YouTube, and all of our social media handles is at JoyNews on TV. Tweet at us with the hashtag The Pulse. Always a pleasure to host you here on The Pulse. Please stay. Well, this afternoon, Special Prosecutor Kisi Ejabeng is firing some salvos at High Court Justice Ifiasewa Esari Bochwe. The anti-graft officer says the judge totally misapprehended his application for confirmation of the freezing order on the will of former Chief Executive Officer of the Forestry Commission, Kojo Owusu-Afriyie, popularly known as Sir John. Mr. Ejabeng froze the assets of Sir John as part of investigations the office commenced into the acquisition of some state lands and properties that were contained in Sir John's will. In May this year, it emerged that the will of Sir John contained some parcels of land at the Achimota Forest Reserve and the Sakumono Ramsar site. It also contained some 4 parcels of land in the Achimota Forest, which the late politician gifted to some individuals, quote, forever. Well, court correspondent Joseph Akable has been monitoring developments for us, joins us now via Zoom. First of all, Joseph, help us understand what transpired in court today and the grounds on which the justice had to throw out the application by the special prosecutor. We'll get Joseph Akable for you shortly, but let's bring you the statement that we're receiving through from the special prosecutor, which says that he's directed the filing of an appeal against the ruling. He explains why, and excerpts of that on your screens right now, and I read portions of it for you. First of all, indicating that the net effect of the ruling of the High Court is that a person in his lifetime gleefully acquire property through corruption, and then upon his demise happily pass on the corruptly acquired property to his beneficiaries for their benefit, and by doing so extinguish all scrutiny as the propriety or otherwise of the acquisition of the property because of his corrupt activities were not discovered during his lifetime. Now, the special prosecutor continues to say that if this decision is left to stand, the Republic will lose the fight against corruption in unimaginable ways. The investigation into the estate of Kojo Owusu-Afriyie, alias Sir John, will still proceed. So portions of the statement there coming through from the special prosecutor. Let's get more from Joseph Akable, who was in court today. Joins us with details of the grounds on which the justice of the High Court then had to throw out the decision or the application from the special prosecutor. But we can just bring you a bit more of the details of what it is that the special prosecutor has been talking about in his statement. also detailing and giving a rundown of how activities started. So what we know is that on May 30, 2022, the special prosecutor directed the freezing of the estate of Kojo Uzofrie alias John, the former chief executive officer of the Forestry Commission. Then on June 9, 2022, the special prosecutor applied to the High Court for a confirmation of the freezing order. Now, July 12, 2022, what we do know is that the High Court, then presided over by her ladyship, Justice Efia-Sewa Esariboche, inexplicably dismissed the application as the statement from the special prosecutor is indicating to us. Now, the judge, according to the special prosecutor, and this is where they express their view, that with respect, totally misapprehended the application for the confirmation of the freezing order and misdirected herself by characterizing the application as that of a confiscation order, which regimes are governed by some different considerations. So that's the position of the special prosecutor on the matter, going on to say that the regime for an application of confirmation of a freezing order is designed to actually facilitate an investigation or prosecution to avoid dissipation of the property in question. Now, while a confiscation order is designed to permanently deprive the owner of the property, the special prosecutor then is now asking that investigations be taking into the circumstances of the purported accusation by the deceased of some protected lands in the Achimota Forest Enclave and the Sakumono Ramsar site. And the statement goes on to point out some more activities that the office has been up to. But it's clear now that the special prosecutor wants to appeal this decision. Joseph Akable was in court today. He's been monitoring the developments on that. But Joseph, first give us the ground on which the justice is making this decision to throw out the appeal from the special prosecutor.
From a key disagreement between the Office of the Special Prosecutor and the lawyers for the estate of Sir John. It simply has to do with under which provision the SP should be acting under. I mean, the SP are taking the view that under Section 38 to 40 of the Office of Special Prosecutor Act, it empowers it to freeze assets of any individual that is being investigated if it finds that it is necessary for investigations to happen. And so this was the basis for the freezing order that was directed by the special prosecutor. The special prosecutor indeed notes that under the act, if within 14 days you take the view that you want the assets to remain frozen, you have to apply to the High Court. And so it's on that basis that this application was sent to Justice Efia-Sewa asking that she confirms the freezing order, which would have meant that the assets could not be moved, could not be, alienated by way of sale, could not be sold or any other thing. It would just be kept and remain while investigations continue. And so that was what was the position. But the court took the view that Section 54 rather is the appropriate way to come under. That has to do with confiscation. It's actually titled about properties that, are acquired in the event that the person who is said to have acquired it has died or the person absconds. And so the special prosecutor argued in court and took the view that that provision is not a relevant one because it has to do with a person who has been convicted or has been charged of an offense. And that is not where they are at this point in time. They are simply carrying out investigations and asking the courts to confirm their freezing order because they think it's important for those assets to remain frozen while investigations continue. And so that was the disagreement on both sides. But the court took the view that the special prosecutor, in terms of the request, does not meet the standards required for the court to grant the confirmation, and so proceeded to dismiss that particular application by the Office of the Special Prosecutor.
Help us understand this. Obviously, we know that the special prosecutor is also laying claim to some provisions within the law. What is he laying claim to, and why does he believe that he has the powers to go ahead and freeze the will of Sir John?
They insist that Section 38 to 40 of the Office of Special Prosecutor Act is the appropriate one that empowers them to do what they are doing, and that all they were simply asking the courts to do was to confirm the freezing order that the OSP had exercised its power to impose. And so they hold a view that this is not a situation where they are actually prosecuting someone or charged someone or have convicted someone. It's not a case that they are confiscation assets that they know for a fact to be tainted or to be process of crime. This is one that they are just carrying out investigations in line with their powers under Section 38 to 40. And so this is what the SP believes that is something that if the decision of the court is allowed to stand as far as they are concerned, they believe that it will be against the fight against corruption, in that once an individual acquires property not in accordance with due process and that person dies, it means that the property will simply pass on to whoever it has been willed to, and the state will not have any hand or any legal basis to step in to try and do any recoveries if necessary.
Joseph Akable is our correspondent joining us with the latest on this. Let's get some legal perspective on this. Justice Abdullah is a law lecturer, the Law School, University of Professional Studies, Accra. Thank you, sir, for your time. So let's get into it. The special prosecutor believes that the justice, first of all, misapprehended the appeal or that demand for the confirmation of a freeze on the will of Sir John. Very harsh words. We've not seen that from any of the special prosecutors that we've had, at least not from Martin Amidu, that we know to be very fiery. But of course, now this special prosecutor appears to be taking on even the bench, I should say. But what do you make of his opinion that the justice did not really get the terms on which he was approaching the bench? Kindly unmute for me so I can get the points you're making, sir.
Sorry, I don't know whether you hear me now.
Yes.
Can you hear me, please?
I can hear you.
Thank you. So my point is that it will be very difficult for me to be able to make any pronouncement on the basis for describing the orders of the judge the way he did, without the benefit of the application and the full ruling before us. However, I can understand why he says so, because the provisions under Section 38 are quite explicit. If you go under Section 38, it's not as if you're going for a fresh order to freeze a particular property. There is already a frozen order in place, which the applicant only goes for a confirmation of. Now, but describing the judge the way he did, for me, is quite difficult, because knowing if you ask her, she's dealt with some of these matters severally, particularly under the EUCO regime. This is what she's been doing on daily basis, almost on daily basis. Almost every case involving fraudulent transactions or involving EUCO or other matters involving illicit funds appears to be in her court. And so, and if you can understand, because she sits in the financial court. And so she's dealt with some of these applications severally, I mean, with her several years at the High Court that I've known her. So these are not completely out of place for her, but she's simply telling us that she would not give her blessings to any freezing orders.
And that's why I want to get your expertise. Yeah, precisely. And that's why I want to get your expertise on the process of what the law says about the confirmation process. Is it the case that a justice, for instance, has discretionary power to approve or otherwise when we find ourselves in such a case?
Indeed. The judge has a discretion to exercise, and you would have to convince her to the limits that she believes is right. Of course, her discretion is exercised within the law. It's not exercised capriciously. Now, if you go through Section 38, you notice that usually, once the special prosecutor considers that a particular property is a desired property to be frozen, he has a right to freeze it. Now, after the freezing, if he intends going beyond the 14 days, the rules is that he goes for a confirmation. Now, let's remember this. This is not completely lost on all of us. When this order is refused, it doesn't stop the special prosecutor to further to exercise his right to freeze the particular property every now and then. He can always exercise this right. The affected party is the one who then would have to go and convince the court to defreeze his property. And so, as would always happen with our judicial system and indeed our criminal practices, there's no bar that simply on the basis of the judge refusing the application, he doesn't have a right to further freeze it for 14 days. So what it may mean is that almost every 14 days, you would have to renew his freezing order. I mean, on the literal angle. This can always happen. And this happens on daily basis with our practices. I may not endorse it. I'm not endorsing that. It's an abuse of the right, but this is what happens. And so you are likely to find the special prosecutor exercising this right to further freeze this property after the refusal of the application. And he may probably do so subsequently until there is a specified order ordering him to abstain from the freezing processes.
And I just wish we could bring back the concluding portions of his statement where he's talking about the implication, for instance, for the nation. His belief is that someone who illegally acquires, for instance, a property, and we're assuming, without admitting at this point, that he's referring to the late Sir John, his cause for concern is that in the lifetime of such a person, that person may gleefully acquire, and you have that on your screens now, acquire property through corruption, and then upon his demise happily pass it on corruptly to his beneficiaries for their benefit, and by doing so extinguish all scrutiny as to the propriety or otherwise of the acquisition of the property. So do you side with the special prosecutor when he expresses this fear that you could have a repetition of a similar case where people would acquire property unlawfully and then pass it on upon their demise?
Indeed, generally speaking, that may be accurate to put. Generally, you are likely to find these happening, and indeed, it's not limited to this scenario. We may, if you've noticed, with political appointment and political corruption, similar things happen. You find that public officers and other high-ranking officials who are involved in political or corruption and prosecuted for their offenses would always have what one may probably call a very generous punishment meted out to them, 2 years, 3 years imprisonment, and they return with finding their booty, of course, waiting for them. After 3 years, you come back and whatever you have been accused of, if indeed you did steal it, you find it waiting for you. If it is millions of dollars, you come and enjoy it. So it is not necessarily limited to passing it on after your death. This one is passing it on even during your lifetime, after your sentence. You come and meet your millions of dollars waiting for you. You have a better life, even more than those of us who are still working and struggling throughout the years that you were in custody. And so this is generally an accurate picture to paint in regards to our fight against corruption and graft. But as to whether this particular instance can be said to be one of such, I think it is yet to be pronounced upon by a court of competent jurisdiction. And so I may not be able to competently say that indeed Sir John's assets were corrupt, were obtained from corrupt practices or other unlawful conduct, for which reason I can attack the decision of the court.
And that seems to be the disposition of the special prosecutor. We'll leave that to his judgment. But finally, the instruction for an appeal, you feel that's likely to succeed? Because
it's a grey area, and we haven't had any of such in the past. I think it is something that we should all be desirous of awaiting the decision from the Court of Appeal if it does come out, because it is going to shape the office of the special prosecutor and indeed the entire regime regarding this particular area. Because either what you would find is that it ends at the High Court and nobody really takes steps to appeal it. And so it is something that all of us would be watching closely to learn from in case in case it is actually pursued and a decision from the Court of Appeal comes out. Whichever way it goes, it would inform all of us as to the way forward in the fight against corruption in future. So it is not something that we should be waiting for or praying for one party to lose or to win. I think it goes whichever way it goes for all of us, and it becomes a learning curve for all of us in the pursuit of justice.
All right then. Grateful for your time, Lawyer Abdullahi, this afternoon on The Pulse. But we need to cross you over to the Ministry of Health now. Negotiations have started on the payment of the cost of living allowances. At least 5 labour unions say they would need a 20% payment of their basic salaries advanced to them to make up for the astronomical hike in prices of goods and services. Today's meeting, as we understand, will have representation from all the aggrieved labour unions, especially the coalition of teacher unions, which have already withdrawn their services because of the failure of government to release the allowances. Even ahead of that engagement today, JoyNews is learning that 3 unemployed nurses have been arrested there at the reception of the Ministry of Health, where Of course, the engagement is taking place and have been whisked away by the police on 2 charges: attempting to picket without order and deceit of a public officer. This follows an earlier intelligence that some government workers had planned to picket at the premises of the Ministry of Health, where, of course, government is engaging organized labor on negotiations for COLA. So let's check out what's happening right now at the Ministry of Health. My colleague Michael Ashale is there for us. Michael, what can you report from where you are?
Okay, so just to start from the first part of the arrest of the 3 nurses that were trying to picket at the Ministry of Health. On the first part of the charges that you read will be that when they got to the premises here, they had been asked earlier what they were here to do, and they had mentioned that they had arrears which had not been paid them yet, and they were here to resolve some of those challenges. So on the basis of that, they were referred to a particular office, only later to realize that they did not go to that office but went to another office, that is the HR's office, where they were supposed to they were going to negotiate for posting instead. So that's a clear difference from what initially they had come to inquire about, and were also directed to that particular office. So they came here, framed themselves as though, allegedly framed themselves that they were posted nurses who had arrears and they were here to negotiate for that. But later on, they said that they were not. They were rather here for their posting. So on the basis of that, the security had asked them to walk out, after which they denied, or they refused, I beg your pardon, they refused to leave the premises because on the reasons of which they are here, that's not a time to come and see them. They refused, and further to that, the police were invited to come in and pick them up, and they had to leave the premises. So 3 of them, I understand there were about 14 of them that initially came here, but 3 of them were picked up and taken to the police station. I'm yet to find out the exact police station that they were taken to. So these are the reasons I want to believe that they were also picked up at the time. But on the issue of COLA, the door that you see behind me open here is where the more than 20 labor unions are expected to be meeting representatives from government. And at the government side, we are expecting a number of organizations. So we are expecting the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations, and I've seen the minister himself here already, and then we're expecting representatives from the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission as well, and I've also seen their rep here, and then we're expecting the Minister of Finance as a rep from the Ministry of Finance. So going to recall the last meeting that happened here, the Minister for Finance was not here, but today I can confirm that he is here in person. Unlike before, he was represented, this ministry was represented by another person who had given responses that were not favorable to some of the meetings, if you recall correctly. So today he's here himself to front the negotiations. And then we're also expecting representative from the Ministry of Education. The minister himself, Dr. Educhum, is also in the meeting. Then we're also expecting a rep from the Ministry of National Security, and then the Control and Accountant General's Department here. So that will be on the government side though. But on the unions that we are expecting, the labor unions here, a very tall list that we are expecting. I must say that I've seen some of the reps here. I mean, unlike what we've seen in the media for those who are requesting, especially requesting for the conditions of living allowance, the COLA, clock sag. I have seen Dr. Bampo Ado himself here as part of the invited organization or labor unions here. So many more others are here, the likes of TUC, TU. I've seen representatives of TU here, that of some of the other organizations, the Midwifery and Nurses Association. I have seen their rep here as well. That of the Ghana National Association of Teachers, their president himself is here. There's that of NAGRAT as well, Angel Carbono, who's also around here. Now, the door right behind me is open at the moment because the groups have broken up for a caucus meeting. The first session, I want to believe, the early session of the meeting started somewhere around a few minutes to 3, say 2:30 thereabout, and then somewhere around 3 they were allowed to break into their caucus meetings where there will be further deliberations. We want to understand that probably there's been an initial offer, after which the caucuses or the various labor unions are supposed to decide whether they're going to be accepting the terms of government or not. Key also on the conversations will be that of Ghana's initial steps to sign on to an IMF program, how that will be impacting these negotiations as well. We are yet to find out how exactly those conditionalities will also play a part of this. We've already heard some of the groups ahead of some of these negotiations mentioned that they don't wish that the IMF will come between their negotiations, given that the reasons they're asking for COLA are still prevalent, are things that they have to face, are real for them, and it's a struggle for some of their membership to live in this prevailing economic conditions. So COLA is not something they are going to be backing down on, but they are here also to listen to what government is going to be saying. Is it going to be any different from the previous meeting last week when government said at the time it will be difficult for them? Sogah, as well, the issue of the striking teachers, striking associations. We know NAGRAT and that of NAT have already declared strike, and that of the Public Sector Workers Union have given an indication on the 19th of July they are going to be going on an indefinite strike. For the striking unions in the last meeting, they were told to call off their strike so that negotiations can commence. So you can see Bampo Ado there representing the CLOGSAG, some people working within the local government and the civil service agencies. So you can see Bampo Ado, who just went into the meeting. I spoke about the caucus meeting. The caucus meetings haven't ended there, though even though the labor unions have ended their discussions. A brief one, I want to believe, but that on the government side is still ongoing. Educhum representing the education ministry, that of finance ministry, the minister himself, Ken Ofori-Atta, are still not returned to this particular room where we are expecting further negotiations to continue.
So what we'll do is that, Papani, you still be on the grounds for us. We'll definitely come back to you after that caucus meeting is over. We'll be coming to you shortly. There's a lot of development happening on the labour front because the East Mamprusi Municipal Secretary of the Ghana National Association of Teachers, Madam Atubila Rose, says almost all teachers in the northern region depend on subsidized loans and are unable to sufficiently cater for their families. The NAT Secretary disclosed this to JoyNews to justify the ongoing strike action by the various teacher unions in demand of the payment of cost of living allowances. There's more in the following report.
Following the declaration of the strike action by the teacher unions, the National Association of Teachers, NAT, in the Northeast region dispatched staff to schools to monitor and ensure compliance among its members. After the first week of the strike action, the East Mamprusi Municipal NAT Secretary, who is also in charge of the Bumpurgu, Napanduri and Yunyo district, Atubila Rose, in her assessment of the report from the monitoring staff, said members of the association were fully in compliance of the directive.
NAT, that comprises of the three political districts, East Mamprusi Municipal, Bumpurgu, Napanduri district, and Yunyo National district. Looking at all these areas, our members are complying with the directive from above. As this district that I've mentioned, we have been divided into 10 locals, and in each of the locals we have executives. So the local executives have been deployed to the various schools in their locals to check and to give report.
The teachers laid down their tools in protest of the failure of government to pay them the cost of living allowance. Justifying the strike action, the NAT Secretary said the demand was due to the obvious rising cost of living and the fact that teachers in the region were already operating in the midst of several challenges.
In fact, when you look at the teacher condition here, it's very bad. When you look at the schools, they are scattered. The landmass is so large or big that when you are attending a school, you travel more than 40 miles. And the only source of transportation is the motorbike. And when you look at fuel these days, a teacher can spend more than almost, let's say 90% of the salary to buy fuel. What is left for the feeding of the family and himself is nothing to write home about. So to be frank, teachers here, we pity ourselves. Let me use the word, we pity ourselves so much. It's not easy. as a nurse secretary, when we look at those who come to take loan, almost all the teachers are on loans. And what they used to feed themselves and their children or their family. And now
JoyNews is learning the government has commenced the distribution of food items to public senior high schools. This was after days of shortage, which forced conference of heads of assisted secondary schools, CHAS, warning the students and parents may soon be compelled to take up the cost of feeding if government fails to provide services to the suppliers. However, there is hope for the school children now, as the Ministry of Education, as we understand, has started the distribution of the food items. First, let's check out the situation up north. Rafiq Salam joins us from the Upper West region. Rafiq, just a couple of minutes ago, I confirmed from the CHAS executives that obviously the distribution has started. What can you report from where you are?
Also report to you that in the Upper West region, precisely at some schools that I visited, West Senior High, Technical School to be precise, West Senior High School to be precise, we've not gotten the food items available. Time is surely running out for the buffer stock company, and then the schools are saying that they are out of stock. The authorities told me that they are still hoping that now that the day is over, they'll still have the food for them. But for now, there isn't any distribution of food to the various schools in that post.
So that's contradictory, because the reports we're learning of is that the various bases for or entry points for the distribution have received the food items. So could it be possibly due to some bureaucracies, which means that the food may delay a few more days?
Yeah, I've been told that they will get the food by the close of today. As we speak now, I said about a handful of schools that I have visited, they are yet to receive there's a scintilla of any food item into their food. And so for now, there will not be any distribution there. Authorities at the schools in that post are saying that they are yet to hear about the food now. So I have visited a handful of schools and they are telling me that they are yet to receive the food items.
But tell us about the mood on campus, the various schools that you visited. What were some of the reactions, particularly from the students who, we understand, have had to find their own way of feeding?
The schools in the Upper West region here are quiet, because of the celebration of the Eid al-Adha. Most of the students were asked to go for that prayer or for that celebration, and then majority of them have not returned. And so we are expecting the arrival of these students back on campus and maybe later in the evening. And so the schools are very quiet now, and that is even very good for the students, because they were saying that the authorities were telling me that the students have stayed in the campus. That clearly means that they will have even run out of stock. But for now, at least somehow it's a good omen for them. So they are still counting on their luck and hoping that by the close of the day, they'll have this food from the Ministry of Food and the Ministry of Education.
And for those who may not get a clear picture, just paint that mental picture for us of how dire the situation is in the Upper West region.
Upper West region, we used to, or the northern sector of the country, we used to have the northern scholarship where, the fees of students were taken care of by the government. But since the advent of this issue of the school feeding program came around, this free teachers came around, it has been lumped with that of the free HHS. And so this time we don't need to talk about the northern scholarship or the northern feeding grants again. And so if they are going, if these food items are not available, clearly means that at least the students will not be happy, because students will have to fend for themselves, or they have to cook for themselves. And that's exactly what is going to happen. And so the mood in the various campuses of the various schools, the students are not really happy about what is happening. And even for fear that they may come to school and will not have these particular commodities. That's why some of the students are staying away after the Salah festivities.
Interesting. I'm grateful, Rafiq, for the very latest update. But earlier today as well, Magnus Innocent Dare, chairperson of CHAS in the Upper West region, told me that the distribution of the food items had started. He, however, called for some reforms in government's policy on feeding.
Yeah, I got a call this morning from our regional buffer stock, and he confirmed that some food have been dispatched. Already rice and sugar have been dispatched, and then the other items will be dispatched as from tomorrow. That one I can confirm that I got a call that these items have been dispatched.
But the question is how many?
All the schools are, from what he told me, all the schools are involved. It is dispatched to, is supposed to cover all the schools. In my region, I know all the schools, and it's the same, I think, across the whole country. As to the quantities, I cannot tell, but he told me it covered all schools. Sort of distribution, we are still trying to arrange that with him. They said it will be brought to a central depot in Wa, but I'm trying to, I'm still discussing with him the possibility of him decentralizing the locations so that it'll be easier for the schools to pick it from there. Before now, previously the suppliers used to bring the food to the schools, but then of late, what they do is they come and leave it at a central pool, at a central depot in Wa, which is the regional capital, and all schools have to go to Wa and pick it from there. It was a little bit difficult, given all the challenges, transport, money, and that kind of thing. It made it a little bit difficult. But if they decentralize it, it'll be easier for us to pick the food items.
Okay,
Met with the minister, we agreed that they should create more distribution centers in the regions so that, which will be nearer to the schools, so that the schools can pick them if they cannot bring them directly to the schools. But if they create distribution centers, which are near for the schools to pick it from the distribution centers.
So
I can talk like for the Upper West region. For the Upper West, for instance, we have the main depot, which is in Wa, which is the regional capital. If they can create another another center or depot, for instance, in Lora, then all the schools from Nadoli, Nandom, right up to Uro, Drapa even maybe will be able to come. Then another depot in Tumu. Then all the schools in the Sisala East, Sisala West can pick from that place. If they can create another depot in Drapa, then it makes it even much better. So if you create, for instance, in the Upper West, 3 extra depots, it will make it easier for the schools to pick up the food items from there. Well, the issue of the strike, as of now, well, like it's happening in many of the schools, management has put itself in readiness. So if, for instance, I have to drive to the depot to collect it myself, I will do so because the students also need to feed.
So
the past few days, like in most of the schools, management has been able to organize itself to look after the students with the help of the youth employment personnel and some volunteers. We've been able to keep the schools running up to this time.
Well, let's take you to the central region now, where JoyNews is learning that some heads of senior high schools there are complaining of the quantities of foodstuff they received. Let's speak to, of course, my colleague Richard Kojanyako has been checking out some of the institutions in terms of the bags of rice and some other food items that schools are taking delivery of now. Richard, just bring us up to speed with what's happening in the central region. Why are the heads of the institutions complaining about the quality or perhaps the quantity of the foods?
Listen, the arrangement has been that the food stuff is delivered to the various schools. Now they even deliver it to a depot, and so the heads of schools have to make the arrangement and then pick them up. But they now have to sign. So if they are supposed to sign for 15 bags of rice, beans, or maize, then they sign for 15 and they are given 10. And they do not understand why. In fact, the last time a head told me that he complained and he rejected it. He had to follow them, go and beg them before they returned that food item. And it's been so, and the heads are unable to talk about it. And so it's been the order of the day. And it is reducing the quality and the quantity of the food served at the dining hall in the various senior high schools across the country. My investigations indicate that it is across the country, it is widespread and not in the central region alone. It is not only about the quantity, but it is about the weight of the rice, the maize, the beans, and all of that. So if they are supposed to even supply about 80 kilograms of rice, for instance, then they supply about 50 kilograms of rice.
But even the point is, Richard, are we even getting a sense of the approach towards the distribution itself and what it is that the standard should be? What normally happens when the food is released? Then how do the heads get delivery of them? Run us through that process first of all.
So the various schools are allotted bags of rice, bags of maize, bags of sugar, and all of that. So if a school is supposed to be allotted 15 bags of sugar, they go and sign for 15, but actually they give them 10 bags of sugar. So that has been the system, the arrangement. So normally they are supposed to get 15, but now they are giving 10. Now, with respect to the weight of the food, of the bags of the maize, rice, sugar, even if they are supposed to be given 80 kilograms worth of rice, they are given 50 kilograms worth of rice. They reduce the weight and then they send it to the schools. Now the schools do not have any option because they can't complain about it. And when they complain, then victimization sets in, and so they have to use it like that. So it has reduced the quantity of the food that is served the various schools and the quality as well. So in some of the senior high schools, my investigation proved that it is the grade A schools where the parents associations are a bit stronger. They have had to contribute to shore up the feeding grants of the various schools so that the food quality and the quantity would improve in that school. So we have an instance at Wesley Girls where I have been interacting with some of the parents. They tell me that they had to pay 500, and when after the payment of the 500 Ghana cedis to support the feeding grant, the children reported back to them that, well, the quantity and the quality of the food that is served at the dining hall has improved tremendously. And so that is what is currently happening.
Richard, if a school like Wesley Girls is complaining about the quality of food, I'm just wondering what then will happen to, and with all due respect to any other school involved in the central region, what kind of quality in terms of food that some of these students will be taking?
So it is breeding. I mean, you are right. So it is breeding some kind of situation. The heads tell me that there is an increasing cases of thefts of food by some students. So they break into the chop box of their colleagues and then they steal. So these are the cases now that have been happening. That they break in some cases, they even take the chop box and then they take out the food items, and then that is it. But parents have had to also buy more provisions because these days children are eating from their chop boxes more than they used to do in those days. And so that is the situation the heads of schools and the school authorities are faced with.
I'm sure that you've been engaging some officials of the Ghana Education Service. What more are we learning from them?
Well, so they are lip tight. They are not talking, just as the heads of schools have been told not to do. They are not talking about any of these situations because the least interaction you have with any media person or anything, then your job may be on the line. That is what they have been telling me.
Anyway, thanks, Richard Kojo-Nyako, for the latest. We'll definitely come back to you to get more updates on what's happening on various campuses across the country. But for now, let's bring you back to the Greater Accra region. Many residents have been displaced following the Ghana Grid Company's demolition exercise today of some illegal structures sited under its high-tension lines. This, it says, is part of its effort to reduce the growing human activities around the poles. Hundreds of the squatters are rushing to salvage their belongings. My colleague Manuel Kranting has been on that beat for us and now reports from La Bawaleshi.
Also, Brace, we've just moved from one of the sites, the demolition site, to another site, and it's happening also here. Just about some 15 minutes ago, this entire area was occupied by shags, which, some of the squatters actually lived in. Right now, the entire area is leveled to the ground. what we're seeing now is remnants and really just debris from the demolished structures which formerly stood here. In the shots also you could see a bit of activity from scrap dealers who now are just scavenging through the rubble to pick what they can, of course for the purposes of selling these scrap materials. But at the crux of this particular issue are the many squatters now who have been left homeless, because indeed these shacks that they called home are now down to the ground. We'll just try and speak to just a few of them, but our information is that the Ghana Grid Company has actually carried out a bit of this demolition exercise in previous times. We're told that up to a third count this exercise has been done, and the people always seem to come back and then set up new structures. We're told also that the catchment essentially is just 15 meters from the center, and so as we are just talking, there's a bit of a scuffle that is erupting just around here. The scrap dealers who are trying to scavenge for some of the stuff that they can salvage from the rubble are being confronted by people who I believe are owners of the shacks, and they say they are not going to allow them to take out the electrical waste that are in there. But just as I was explaining to you, 15 meters from the center of the high tension poles to the left and to the right are all being demolished, and that of course is the reason that these entire kiosks and structures have been taught. We'll just try and speak to them and find out why exactly they keep coming back each and every time that the demolition exercise is carried out over here. Madam,
Pacha, me blame you, no man,
only on money. And now on my bubooning.
I'm saying,
but then I'm over now.
I say, skin, or be in the new black Scapa behind. You see, I dine border then the Unyesca. I can have a blah blah Unyesca, I have a blend kiss on our vineyard. Over bless, I know my son.
Assassin mode kiosks nesis mutiasica mobians and mode assassins a mode kiosks nesis one.
Oh, there be in Chiamo.
Okay, Moana mode kiosks in BC home. But some catch him and say, Baby Boo, and a man country.
I answer.
Monte. I don't pay more honey ban saying.
You're one of mobile. See, as a dump on your peer and say, you peer no more boo as a
Pierre now more start to put it.
Must start to put it.
I see. And so she's telling me that she lives here with two of her brothers who own shacks right here, and where they just woke up to the exercise, moving on in earnest. And just by way of description for you, the entire space over here just littered really with people who are looking on as their belongings are just being torn down. I see mattresses, I see utensils, cooking utensils, I see water, tanks, reservoirs, and so on and so forth, bowls that they use to store water, and on all of them. But all across this end, we see a few of the people, just hanging around there, and they are all attempting really to pick what they can before the exercise just gets to them. And so as we move along, you see right here, over this particular area, I see a woman, quite elderly, looks to me like in her 60s, also right in the thick of the debris, attempting to also pick what she can.
I have a husband, and we came here to struggle. You understand me? We came here to struggle to get. I went out from my hometown to come here to come and sleep inside a kiosk. This is a wood. I know that it's risky for my life, but because of I don't have, and I came here to go and help my people and in my home country. That is why I'm here, and I'll come and stay to use my own hand to vote for the government, and you are not helping me. It's not good.
But did you pay any money to put your kiosk here?
Although I did not pay, but those who are here that I came and meet them, they say they are the landlords. They are here before me, so they'll take money from you. So I paid, but it's not for the government that I pay for. But they should know that if you are not paying, we are all helping ourselves. We are all human beings. You are a human being, I'm also a human being. And that doesn't mean that if you have a burden sleeping in, and I don't have a burden, I'm not a human being. I'm part of the humans. If you call a woman, I'm also part of human being. So you can't sack all of here and say that we should go. And we are not going anywhere. What we want the government to know that we are not going anywhere. Today or tomorrow, we will be staying here till that where we want to go, we will go. We are not going anywhere because we are all voting for you. It's my hand that make you be there where you are. Without me, you are nobody. Without me, what we want them to understand that without we, they are nobody. And that doesn't mean that, serious brother, don't look at my face, and I'm serious with that. Even without me, the government will not come and to make you to be who you are. It's not that if I'm sleeping inside the wood, I'm not a human being. I'm part of human being. They should have patience with us. They should fear for us. What we want you to know is that we are part of human beings. They should fear for us. They should feel pity for us. Is it my like? I don't like it because
I'm say high tension. I say it's here more than
high tension. About to say campaign. Namun say high tension about to say campaign say yan to mamo. Na say high tension say. High tension say about to dura. Mama be no campaign say to mamo. 2020 ana kufor be na say campaign. Mutumame. Na high tension when we are to say bua.
And so what he tells me in Chi is that quite a number of the politicians actually, he makes an example of the sitting president Akufo-Addo, who had earlier come here in 2020 to campaign and request their votes. And he is responding to that concern of GridCo that this place is dangerous, that if they could come here to come and campaign to them and it wasn't dangerous at the time, how did it overnight just turn dangerous after they had voted for them? So you're just getting a sense of the agitation and the frustration that people are expressing even as we're here.
And you're still with us here on the Pulse on the JoyNews channel. We'll return shortly after this break. PP General Secretary John Boydu will this weekend be seeking to, of course, get the support and the mandate of members of the New Patriotic Party to retain his seat as the General Secretary of the governing New Patriotic Party. He's coming up against 5 others. He believes his experience can in some way come in handy in the party's quest to retain power. Joseph Akable has today's edition of the special build-up to the New Patriotic Party's national officers' elections.
The National Executive Committee decided by unanimous decision of all members present to suspend Mr. Kwabena Japon indefinitely.
John Boydu became acting NPP General Secretary at a time the party was in turmoil. Its national officers, including Chairman Paul Afoko and General Secretary Kwabena Japon, had been suspended. He went on to hold the position substantively as he led the party into victory in the 2016 and 2020 polls.
It's simple. My campaign is premised on the fact that the New Patriotic Party is at a critical moment. A moment that calls for experienced people. A moment that calls for combination of the youth, women, and the strength of the party in order to liberate the energies of our party people towards victory in 2024. We will keep our campaign clean. We know that this baby is our baby. We are like the woman who Solomon decided that they should kill the live one. The one that the baby doesn't belong to said that they should divide it into two. The woman that the baby belongs to said they should give it to the woman. I, John Boydu, with these executives, we have toiled to bring this party to this far. It will be difficult for us to be part of any agenda to bring disunity. We believe that we are winning and winning hands down. That one, there's no two ways about it.
His critics, however, say he was part of a team of executives that saw arguably the party's most abysmal parliamentary performance in the 2020 polls when it recorded a net loss of 32 seats. He, however, believes he's the most experienced hands the MPP can rely on.
Check in the year 2020, in the midst of COVID, how many political parties in government won elections when they contested elections in the year 2020? The almighty Trump lost. Angela Merkel lost the election, the party lost. And a lot of political parties, if you go to India, they lost the election in 2020. We were almost the only political party that won under COVID in 2020. It should tell you that because of the challenges of COVID, for instance, a lot of the things that we expected to deliver, for instance, we only grew by 0.4%. Which is never happened in this country. Throughout the world, only about 30 countries had a positive growth, and Ghana was one of them. Our management of COVID was par excellence in terms of annals and history of how COVID is managed. That is the only reason why we managed to win.
Mr. Boyedu's political career has been one of service to the party, holding many positions including National Finance Officer, National Youth Organizer, National Deputy Communications Director, and now General Secretary. Prior to his rise at the national level, he also served the party as well at the grassroots from polling station chairman to constituency secretary to regional research and elections officer. He believes the support of key party officials comes in handy in his quest to break the eight.
The party is not run by one person. The party is run by numerous unidentified people who offer their services at no cost to the party. So sometimes people are talking, you ask them what are they talking about. This is a party that owes our successes to the full soldiers of our party. And I can say with authority that the people you see here are people coming from all sectors of our party.
Number one on the ballot, incumbency advantage, strong access to party structures leaves analysts little choice but to tip Mr. Boyedu as the clear favorites to win over the weekend. Stay with your election headquarters for the very latest.
There's certainly a lot of action this weekend. You need to stay on the JoyNews channel for the latest. Now, Interior Minister Ambrose Derry has urged the people of Nandom in the Nandom municipality and Gao in neighboring Burkina Faso to cooperate and to share information to ward off suspected terrorist and jihadist groups in Ghana and Burkina Faso. He noted that government's launch to Operation See Something, Say Something campaign is embraced by the two communities along the borderline to maintain and to reduce some criminal activities there. There's more in the following report.
Interior Minister Ambrose Derry noted that the Nandom municipality, to a very large extent, has contributed to relative peace in the Upper West region, considering its proximity to Burkina Faso. He urged the people in the municipality to embrace government's campaign of See Something, Say Something to ward off suspected terrorists and jihadist groups from the country.
That the Nandom traditional area shares a boundary with Burkina Faso. I'm looking forward to us working together to keep out extremists and appeal to join the See Something, Say Something.
Speaking at the coronation of Pufiana, Dr. Nadep Terebora Tenzo Benem V, which was also attended by chiefs, mayors from Burkina Faso, who they shared blood relations with, Ambrose Derry appealed for cooperation between the two sides to bring peace in the two countries.
We do know that the border has divided families, and I believe that our relationship with those immediately across the border can help us ensure that the peace in our country is preserved. He has come with his entourage. I welcome them, and I hope that through your relationship, you'll be able, you are an experienced security man, to enable us work on both sides to protect both Ghana and Burkina Faso from extremists and jihadists.
The Interior Minister sees the opportunity to also speak on some ongoing projects in the constituency.
My brother and I are aware that when I used to visit him in the palace behind me, the road from Nandom to family that passed in front of this house was a death road. Anytime a vehicle passed, we had to inhale dust. We have since gone beyond that. It is time. We also brought electricity, and we continue to give to those homes that don't have. He is aware that with me, we have done water points and a kindergarten on the other side.
Apologies there for the poor quality of sound. The Chief Executive Officer of Cocoa Board, Joseph Boahin Edu, says the low pricing of cocoa on the international market, despite the current shortage of cocoa in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, is creating suspicions of deliberate attempts by the global cocoa and chocolate traders to perpetually keep the price of the commodity at its lowest. According to him, the COVID-19 pandemic resulted in a natural surplus of cocoa in both Ghana and Ivory Coast for 2021, which kept prices lower. And despite the huge shortages of the commodity in both countries for supply, prices are still down, fueling some suspicion. The CEO was addressing senior cocoa value chain actors, multinational companies in cocoa and key sectors at a meeting hosted by the Cote d'Ivoire Ghana Cocoa Initiative in Accra to deliberate on the sustainable solutions for a more thriving cocoa industry with a focus on living income differential and country premiums. Well, joining us now for more via Zoom is Public Affairs Director at Cocoa Board, Fifi Boafo. Thank you so much for your time. But even before we start the conversation, you do know that the Republic of Ghana, together with Cote d'Ivoire, are currently pursuing a joint cooperation on investments with regard to cocoa pricing. We'll bring you some updates shortly. But for now, even before we get to Fifi Boafo on that, the Chief Executive Officer is raising some concerns about what he believes may be sabotage on the international market. Fifi Boafo is back on Zoom. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. So what do you suspect as Cocoa Board may be the fault in the international market for which the prices are not soaring as of now?
Well, the Chief Executive indicated this at a meeting we had with major international buyers in the cocoa industry. And his view is that in economics, whenever there is oversupply, it leads to falling price. And of course, when demand outstrips supply, definitely its effect is that price will increase. But if you look at the price of cocoa product, at a time where production was higher than demand on the market, the price was low. Presently, production generally in Ghana and also in Cote d'Ivoire, the two major producers, supply is on the low side, but it still do not see the effect in terms of price. So that's why you question the fact that is there something deliberately being done to suppress price, because at a time where you have low production, it should automatically lead to price increase, which we are not seeing. So that's the basis of the question the Chief Executive asked at such an important meeting with the big players within the industry.
Right, and for those who are not very much conversant with how the pricing is done on the international market, give us a sense of how that is done on the international market and how that influences producing countries such as Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire.
Okay, so generally, what happens is that there's a futures market where prices are determined, and in recent times, algorithms generally determine the price of cocoa products. But there are institutions that determines that, okay, within this period, this is how much cocoa is selling, largely based on what is being offered at the international price. And usually, just like any normal trading activity or any normal business, based on product availability. And these buyers have researchers and then, of course, institutions that also do forecast to tell that this is the quantity of cocoa or this is the quantity of the products available on the market. Based on that, then we are able to say that, okay, then there's a high likelihood that there will be shortage of cocoa products on the international market, which definitely will have an effect on price. And in the same way, when there's also a possibility or when there's the forecast that price will also, production will grow more than the market can afford, it will also have an effect. So this is how the market operates. And then the question we are asking at this point is, considering what production levels are at the moment, we should not be experiencing a situation whereby the price is still very low, which is having effect on producing countries and farmers who are dependent on what is derived from the market.
The government banked its hopes on the joint cooperation with Ivory Coast. Many experts say we should have been protectionist in nature towards our cash crop. What's your take on that?
If you say protectionist, exactly what are you?
And at least the cooperation, as we're seeing, is not yielding that desired result. The finance minister was backing that move of trying to work together to fix the market price, but it appears that's not paying off. It's not working, is it?
It has not achieved the desired result. However, you will not be able to say it has failed. The reason being that if you realize, for example, the living income differential is as a result of the agreement between these two countries or the cooperation between these two countries. But you've also realized that at the time of introducing the living income differential, which is bringing in $400 every ton of cocoa sold from Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, we've seen another means of making sure that we do not have the full potential or undermining what the living income differential is supposed to do for cocoa farmers. And that has to do with the country differential, which countries derive based on quality of cocoa that is produced. That is the more reason why the meeting that was held with all the international buyers in Accra. So yes, it has not fully realized the potential, but it has not failed. And that is the more reason why we are also not sleeping or sitting back to say that, well, we don't have the full potential of it, so we should let it go. We are making sure that we realize the full potential of the living income differential, which is an offshoot of the cooperation between Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire.
Fifi, are you not worried that there may be dire implications for the Ghanaian economy and also, by extension, the farmers themselves who are the receiving end of all of this?
Well, if you pay attention to the outcome of the meeting that was held, that should give you an indication that, well, it is not a matter for worry, but it's a matter for making sure that the set target is achieved. Because after the meeting, almost all the international big boys, if you like, within the industry signed to ensure that any such steps as we've realized that seeks to undermine the living income differential, which of course improves the income that we are able to bring in into the country, and of course the farmers, we protect that income. So yes, we've achieved something from that Friday meeting, which points to the fact that this is not something for us to worry, but to make sure that we stick to the arrangement put in place, which seeks to only improve our economy and also the income of our cocoa farmers.
Are you on a course to review the LIDs, or perhaps it will remain stable for some time?
Well, the LID is not being reviewed at the moment. We believe that it's a good initiative that is bringing in extra income. However, we felt that there were means that was being used to undermine the result from the LID, and that was the reason why we called for that meeting. Of course, the meeting has been able to achieve something. We have been able to indicate strongly that such moves that seek to undermine the benefits we seek to derive from the LID will not be tolerated. And of course, all of them have come to the agreement that yes, they will respect this. Bear in mind, it's an international trade. Right. In as much as we as country, we seek to get the full realization of the benefit from these arrangements, the people you are dealing with will also seek to find means of making sure that you do not stand to benefit to their disadvantage. So they'll come out with ways that seeks to also wash away or chip away part of the benefit you are going to realize. And then the discussion and the negotiation shall continue.
And Fifi, I have just a minute to go, but I'm interested in finding out from you in the wake of the IMF decision by government. Obviously, the cocoa sector generates significant revenue for this country. The belief is if we're able to turn around the sector, then we could be able to turn the tides very quickly. What are you doing as an authority, Cocoa Board, to try and, of course, show up our revenue measures?
Well, it is, if you look at what the IMF is asking for, or what the country is asking for from the IMF, that is within a very short period of time. So it will be difficult for you to say that within this very short period of time, you can't overnight turn the fortunes. However, the government policy is that we are able to process more of our cocoa, and the target is to do a minimum of 50%. I think over the past 5 years, we've been able to move from 23 to about 40% of the cocoa. So gradually we are pushing towards that realization. And it's our belief that if we're able to do more value addition, this will be able to improve the revenue of the country.
Fifi Boafo, I'm grateful for your time. Let's cross over now to Parliament. Of course, we're getting indication just on the last note that we ended on the IMF bailout. We understand that the delegation in the country is meeting the Finance Committee there. Let's cross over to Kweku Asante, who's our parliamentary correspondent monitoring events for us. So Kweku, tell us about the latest engagement. Has that meeting with the IMF delegation started, and what more can you report?
So, Blessed, a few minutes ago, a number of cars arrived in the precincts of Parliament, which we are told is being occupied by officials of the IMF. We've also just seen members of the Finance Committee just file out of Parliament, ostensibly to go into that meeting. So, it is expected that that meeting would have started by now, or if it has not started, it is just about starting. It's a closed-door meeting; it's not open to the media. But we are picking feed from our sources within the meeting, that as soon as the IMF officials are ready to listen to Ghanaians, what the minority on the committee are seeking to say is that government is not reporting the right figures to them, and that they must look at the books and make a determination. I spoke to Alhaji ABF Hussein. He's not a member of the Finance Committee, but he has his ears on the ground. He says he's very much interested in this negotiation that government is having with the IMF. What he has been telling me is that government has been cooking figures, that is his words, allegedly, and government presents different set of figures to Ghanaians and then presents a different set of figures to the IMF. And so once the negotiation with the IMF concludes, Ghanaians will get to the point where they will get the full picture in terms of what the numbers really are. He says that the economic situation is worse than the government is reporting now, and he's urging his members, the minority members on the Finance Committee, to press that the IMF gets the accurate figures. In the other day, when IMF published some of these data, then Ghanaians will have access to it. And so it's said to be a back and forth meeting. From what I've picked so far, the minority are entering this meeting to insist that government has mismanaged the economy, and also that government is not presenting the true state of the economy. And so the IMF would have to open their eyes, so to speak, to be able to get the data that they want. The majority side, on the other hand, very much content with the issues that have been raised so far and the explanation that have been offered by their government. And so it's expected to be this kind of a political divide between both sides, and it will be interesting to note what the conclusion will be.
Give us a sense of how a majority is going into this meeting, knowing very well that they may be antagonized by the minority side, who are even claiming that the figures, for instance, are not accurate.
So what the majority MPs want to do is to try and get a buy-in of their colleagues, because these are people who are meeting from the IMF. Let's not go there. Let's not create scenes. Let's try and go with a united front. The minority insists they are not trying to embarrass government. All they are trying to do is try and present a set of data or a set of arguments that will tell the IMF that they should be much careful with the kind of data they are receiving from the government side of the negotiation. We know that even tomorrow was the day scheduled for the media budget review. But the Deputy Finance Minister has just announced to the media that government will do so next week after negotiation with the IMF concludes. what we are picking is that the negotiation, the talks that have started so far, government will get some sort of data and some sort of expertise and some of decisions that they will put into the media budget review as a result of the talks that they will be holding with the IMF. And so the majority side going into this meeting to try and defend the viewpoint of government that this is the true state of the economy. We are trying to present to you our own homegrown policies so that you give us the backing so that we can get the credibility that the market deserves.
How long are we expecting this engagement to last?
Well, this meeting, because it's just familiarization meeting, ordinarily it's not expected to last for so long, given that the IMF officials arrived very much on time, just before 4 p.m. They arrived here in Parliament. It's expected that by 5 p.m. or by 6 p.m. this meeting would have concluded. But for such meetings, sometimes you cannot just tell. A few details might come up which will drag the meeting for a few hours. Parliament itself is sitting, and some MPs themselves will probably want to come back and continue the business of the House. So what we are expecting is that between now and 6 o'clock, this meeting would have concluded. There are some who are telling us that this meeting will end probably much faster, but there may be a few details that may come up that will drag this meeting for some time.
Is this meeting exclusive to members of parliament only, or we cited some more government officials who've been negotiating with this delegation since the somewhere last week, as we understand?
So the information we have is that this meeting is IMF officials meeting the Finance Committee of Parliament. And so the central plank of members of Parliament from the Finance Committee will be represented. Given how we know the committees operate, other members of Parliament who are not even necessarily Finance Committee members who show up to try and participate in the meetings, although they may not be Finance Committee members. But given the way some of these work, I will not be surprised, for instance, if officials of the Finance Ministry also come into this meeting. Sometimes it's very much necessary so that some questions and answers that are needed will be thrown to some of these officials. But it's not expected to be high level, the ministers themselves or their deputies. It's supposed to be some technical officers from the Finance Ministry supposed to join to try and give the meeting a certain fair background in terms of the kind of information both sides need to be able to hold talks. But because Parliament itself is not a party, strictly speaking, of these IMF, it's just government, the executive, the Finance Ministry, representing government, and then the IMF. What the IMF officials who are coming into Parliament today are seeking to do is to try and get the viewpoint of Ghanaians. I will not be surprised if in the coming days IMF decide to hold other public hearings or even decide to meet some civil society organizations to get their thoughts on what kind of deal they should be able to give government to be able to support the economy. And so it's the key people who are expected to be in this meeting are MPs, but there may be a few officials from the Finance Ministry who will be coming to provide the necessary support and answers.
Kwaku Asante will be in Parliament to bring you some more updates. And thanks for staying with us here on the Pulse on the Joy News channel. We're having a bit of a developing story on that engagement underway at the Ministry of Health between organised labour and the government of Ghana over the cost of living allowances. It appears that 2 labour unions have already boycotted the engagement even before the talks end by 5 p.m. today. But we can cross you over now. Get first of all the reaction of some groups, including the National Graduate Teachers Association, who have already stormed out of that meeting. Angel Kabono happens to be president of the group. He's been explaining reasons accounting for why his labour union is not continuing with the engagements with government. We understand that another labour union has also followed suit, has also boycotted that engagement, which is underway at the Ministry of Health, a high-powered delegation from government engaging organised labour. But first, let's listen to Angel Kabono explain why they had to storm out of that meeting.
And why the teacher group is even walking off. So, President.
Right. Yeah. Yes, thank you very much. I think what has happened today is very unfortunate. As what we can say now is that our negotiation has come inconclusive and we are still on strike. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, when you say it has come
no, we are still on strike. That's all that he has said. We don't want to give any further detail.
But you are boycotting the meeting
No,
now.
we are not boycotting the meeting. There are other people still in there.
But why are you leaving?
That one we'll talk to you about it later. But for now, the strike is still in force and it ends there.
But I understand that you were given an initial offer. Is that true? Is that something you can confirm? For which some other groups are agreeing to that?
We cannot say anything now. All that we can say is what the NAT president have said. Negotiations are inconclusive. and teachers strike. The teachers' educational sector strike is still on.
It's ongoing. Okay, so you cannot confirm that you were given an initial offer for which some other groups are accepting it and you don't want to accept it. Okay, so we just heard that from.
Meaning what?
Yes. They do not want to welcome us to this meeting, and we cannot begrudge them. So that is why we are walking out.
When you say they don't want to welcome you, but you were in there and they walked in and...
Yes, we received invitation under organized labor, and we are part of organized labor.
They are indicating and asking us to call off our strike before negotiations begin.
Exactly.
So what it means is that the government side is not ready to continue negotiations unless the teacher unions call off strike. They've held all organized labor hostage. And this is a betrayal of trust, because the understanding we had is that organized labor is being convened for us to find solution to the issue of cola. Right now, since we are undesirable, we think that before they even walk us out of the meeting, we are walking out of the meeting ourselves. Thank you very much. Yes.
So
and
you just heard from the
leadership of the two teacher unions out of the 4 that we understand are currently withdrawing their services because of the cost of living allowances. The hope was that after today's engagement, obviously, there'll be a middle ground for the teachers to return to the classrooms, as the president appealed for over the weekend. That's not happening anytime soon, as we're getting clear indications now from NAGRAT and also the mother union, NAT, giving clear indications that that meeting has not been favorable and that government has not been welcoming enough. In fact, some sources are pointing to us that government is not willing to give that 20% upfront. There are some demands also from government to the labor unions. We'll get some updates for you shortly from Michael Papa Ni Ashale, who's there at the Ministry of Health, monitoring the events for us. He'll bring us up to speed with what's been happening to the other labor unions that have remained in this engagement. But for now, we do know that the teachers, as they've announced to us, that strike remains unchanged, so which means that in the coming days, we're set to see that industrial action intensify. More and more teachers would have to, of course, go further away from the classrooms, because the leadership has given them that express notification that today's engagement has not been successful. But Michael Papani Ashale has the latest for us, joins us now from the Ministry of Health, where we understand that engagement is happening. Michael, what's the latest?
Yeah, so Blessed, you can see the Deputy Minister for Employment, right, Bekubope, leaving the meeting. Minister, so essentially, what was the agreement that you had at the end of the day?
We have had to call off the meeting. We have had to adjourn because both parties, Labour and government, think that we can't do this whilst a party is on strike. So the agreement is that we are going to talk to each other. They call off the strike and we come again to meet.
But these teachers have left. The other ones are there who are waiting for probably at least an offer from government.
There's an agreement that we adjourn and come back. Okay. So we will adjourn in the course of the week. We will reconvene and then negotiation will start.
But I see that you took long since the first break. You took long to come back. What exactly was the hold up for government?
No, it was a caucus meeting the labor unions had requested to have. Okay. So we were waiting for them. It's not the government side that took long.
Okay. So right now, what would be telling the at least the striking unions? We understand that the public sector workers are also looking at those who are embarking on the strike on the 19th. What would you now be telling them?
They should exercise patience like they have done. Hopefully, as they call off the strike, we will engage and then everything will be settled. Thank you.
So how soon are you expecting them to come back to the negotiating table?
Very soon, very soon. We will have that.
All right, so you just heard from the Deputy Minister for Employment and Labour Relations, Reku Broby, essentially from the meeting here, telling us that there's an agreement. We were speaking to the other groups whether that agreement holds for all of them. You can also see in your shots the Minister for Finance just walking off there. In the last meeting, he was not there. Reason some of the groups gave for which they could not come to an agreement. The meeting ended in a stalemate here. We have some more groups here. We have Dr. Yankson, who is with the Ghana Medical Association, also here as part of the meeting. Dr. Yankson, for your group, are you satisfied with the level of negotiations that has happened so far?
The best is that we are still going to meet again, and that is the most important thing. So as and when the next meeting is called, we will all continue.
The Deputy Minister tells me that you all agreed to adjourn today's meeting?
That's why I'm saying that we've agreed to adjourn and we'll continue. So as and when it's called, we all will go for the meeting.
Okay, so you just heard from the representative of the Ghana Medical Association this particular crunch meeting happening at the Ministry of Information. We'll try to get some more groups here. So we've heard from the Deputy Minister for Employment and Labour Relations, Reku Brobe, and then from the Ghana Medical Association. Earlier, we spoke to some other groups, the Ghana National Association of Teachers and that of the Ghana Graduate and the National Association of Graduate Teachers, NAGRAT. Their president, Isaac Owusu, and that of Angel Kabono, respectively, said they were going to excuse themselves from the meeting, and you heard some of the issues that were raised. One of the issues that came up, the reason for which they left, was that they had to call off their strike before they could come to the negotiating table, but they haven't done that. And you hear an emphatic statement from Angel Kabono and that of Isaac Owusu that the strike is still on, essentially. Some more groups will try to get to some of them and see what exactly have been said here. So there's another one going here.
You have not been able to raise conclusion.
Oh, I'm not. I'm not disappointed at all.
Why are you not disappointed?
I know that is the way it is going to travel, so I'm not disappointed at all.
But people would have expected that this meeting would have agreed on something. What did the Minister of Finance tell you? Was he able to put something on the table?
No, you weren't in the room.
Yeah.
Nothing was put on the table, and we want the betterment of our people and want very good things for our people. So any meeting that couldn't end today, we are sure that at the next meeting, maybe something good will come out of that.
One of your arms is off. That's the teachers. They have decided not to call off. Are you disappointed?
No, I'm not disappointed at all, because you see, today's meeting was for organized labor. It wasn't for teacher unions meeting. It was organized labor, and organized labor include all the teacher unions and all other sector unions. So if you say that you want to deal with teacher unions in this matter, a matter that affects all workers in this very country, I don't think it's fair. So I'm not disappointed that they went away.
What was the earlier confusion about?
There was no confusion.
Are you sure?
Yes. Confusion where? In the room?
Yes. Okay.
No, but when we are discussing, definitely some voices may be high, some may be low, but at the end of the day, we are interested in the outcome of the discussions.
Support the strike?
Supporting what?
The strike, you still support it?
Supporting the strike?
Yes.
Oh, for now, I think that they have declared the strike, and they are still on strike. And I think that if I were them, if I was in their shoes, definitely that's the same thing that I would do. And the last time I told you that I want government to actually find solution to this issue, to avoid further actions from other sector workers of this very country. So the earlier they find, the earlier they find solution to this matter, it will end all the hula baloo in this very country. So my advice is that government to find.
You just heard a rep from the TUC, essentially one supporting the strike by NAGRAT in one vein, and the other saying that what would have been just nice to have the meeting continue on abrogated like what you saw earlier. Yes, we are still at the Ministry of Health, where crunch meeting was happening here to discuss the cost of living allowance that we've seen some labor unions ask for. We've seen a lot of them, the teacher unions, CCT, NAGRAT, NAT, some other ones. The Ghana Medical Association members have also requested for 20% of their basic salary given to them as a cost of living allowance, just to cushion them against the prevailing hardship with the economy. They've been making a lot of examples. So we'll try to get to some more groups here, but you can see them leaving their droves of vehicles leaving here. Essentially, after the meeting here, we've spoken to the Deputy Employment Minister, who says there's an agreement. Some of the groups also confirm that to us as well. So it's a lot of things flying about today. TUC just confirming to us that, well, no official proposal have been given to them for them to consider yet. They are only hoping that the next meeting will be more fruitful than probably what this is. For JoyNews, Sogah, Michael Ashale from the Ministry of Health.
Obviously, that's it for you in terms of the development on that engagement. There's more in our subsequent bulletins, particularly on JoyNews Prime. You want to make some time for that. But the confirmation we have now is that that meeting between organized labor and the government has ended inconclusively, with some of the labor unions storming out of that meeting. We'll bring you updates later on. This has been The Pulse on the JoyNews channel. My name is Blessed Sogah. Log on to myjoyonline.com. We have updates for you. Next is Let's Talk Sugar.